I'm going to try to randomly tell a story. I have the concept for the story. I know the title of the story, but I haven't really planned anything out. So what I'm going to do now is attempt to just tell a story and let it unfold as I think. So bear in mind, this is not rehearsed or pre-written. And the story is titled The Addic /T. So, The Addic /T. Basically, it's a story that depicts the world of the addict versus the majority of society who wouldn't know the first thing about how it is to be an individual forced to live in secrecy and shame. And I have no idea how this is gonna go, but the concept is there. So let's see what we can do with it. Just give me a minute, okay? I'm gonna start in a minute. I just need to let that concept settle in a little more before I try to figure this unfolding story. And when I tell this story, it is because I identify as an addict, and I've also accepted that I will always identify as an addict. And the journey for the addict is, how do you get from the attic down the stairs? And how do you blend in with a world that you don't understand? It is not easy, and it is tricky. So my heart goes out to anyone who suffers with addiction, whether it's an eating disorder or bipolar or borderline, whether it's autism, Asperger's, ADD, ADHD. It doesn't matter if the addiction is simply trauma response because you went through something that tore your innards out and you never figured out how to put them back in and stitch yourself back together. Because perhaps the one thing you needed was a friend. And perhaps the one thing you needed was a friend who understood you. So in light of that, this improvised story goes out to anyone who suffers mental illness, which is all of us, but some of us struggle just a little bit more. And at the end of the day, shame should not play a role in this. Guilt should not play a role in this. And hope is what everyone suffering needs to hear. There is hope, and you do matter, and you are important, and no, you're not always going to be this way. There is a hope for your change, hope for your future, hope. You are strong inside. You just haven't found it yet. Let me just tell you that. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to trust that there's a possibility that things could get better. Disappointment is a big price to pay to lose the glimmer of hope in yourself. So please, even on your darkest days, remember that tomorrow, you're still going to know you're a good person deep down in, and you're still going to have a chance to find that little sparkle of hope. So please, with all my respect and love, keep going and keep searching for that sparkle. Every day when you wake up, look around you and find something that brings you the slightest bit of positive energy. A leaf, a flower, a bug, anything that makes your inner child peak. Because that is what's going to help you get through this. And also leaning on the people who are trying to be there to help you. Without further ado and no further rants or no further whatever rambling, I'm going to in a moment try to tell a story. All right. Okay. We'll see how this goes now that I've gotten distracted with my long speech. That wasn't the intention of this recording. However, I've had a few beers and let's be honest, I ramble and I'm smoking pot, so that makes it even worse. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Let's get on with it. There's no real prediction of how good or bad this will be, but either way, I'll fine tune it later. No big deal. Okay. So there was a town, and it was an unusual town because the citizens of the town being called Thompsonville. Now, they had a different way of thinking about things and just a slightly different outlook on life. They had been thinking, what is the point in everybody having their own individual home? That didn't really sit with them. They really had a strong sense of community. It felt like everybody you saw was part of your family. So one of the elders said, let's build a giant home. And everybody in Thompsonville can have a room. And everybody will benefit from what the other has to offer and will be close. And the rest of the land that we have can be used for farming and for, all the other things that everybody wants to do. With a small town like Thomasville, space was a big concern. Money, the politics, and the elders decided, no, this is a really good idea. So the town of Thompsonville embarked on a big project to build the biggest house, and I'll call it a house, and maybe it kind of seems to me like a hotel, like the size, like even bigger. Like think about like 7, 8 hotels joined together. Like this town was going to live in this building, and it would look like a house, like any house you'd see on a residential street. It would have the look of a home, but it would house the whole town. Rent wouldn't be a problem. The budget would be shared among everybody. The cost would be affordable, and life could be harmonious. However, when the project was finished, and they began knocking down all the old houses to make room for other projects the town would enjoy. A zoo, some community parks, a recreation center, a grocery store. a mall. While this was going on, and they were knocking down all the old structures, the uncertainty of change, the insecurity of some citizens on this new embark, some of the already suffering citizens of Thompsonville all of a sudden finding themselves without their old home. The tricky part about all of this was the change was overwhelming. And the mental health in these part of town was dark. And until this point, they had their hollows and their hiding places. But now, with the one giant home and all the houses being knocked down and all the public shopping and parks and recreation centers being built, there was less and less room for the poor souls of Thompsonville who were suffering, and mostly were able to stay hiding because they didn't feel that we were worthy of coming out of the shallows. So there was a lot of fear, and the fear created even a worse condition for these individuals. And you could say that if you consider mental illness a disease, that this spread throughout more and more people in Thompsonville during this period of time when the houses were being knocked down. And then there was the next phase of the project. Everybody in Thompsonville would have to register for a room in the new giant home. And in order to do that, they had to fill out forms. They had to answer questions about themselves. They had to reveal personal details and show that they could be productive and stable and dependable and Class A citizens of Thompsonville. There were rules. There were regulations. There were people watching and making sure that nothing would make Thompsonville dirty or smudged. That left the big part of the population suffering with the dark thoughts and the fears. Nowhere really to go and no options, because the best that they could do was try to register for a place in the new huge home. Unfortunately, no one they talked to believed them. They tried to reason with them. They tried to say anything to get them approved for their rooms. But no matter how hard they tried, the permission did not get granted. They were told that there's no room for you in this home. However, that didn't solve a problem. It created this other problem. All of a sudden, Thompsonville had all these wonderful places: a recreation center, a park, a mall, a zoo. They were booming. But there was this one issue. More and more parts of Thompsonville had gatherings of homeless people who didn't have anywhere to go and didn't have any means of getting anywhere. And Thompsonville politics, the mayor of the town, his name is, Garfunkel, Mayor Garfunkel. He tried to sweep them away, didn't get very far because they just came back. There was nowhere to go. He tried to cover them up, shove them off to like somewhere they wouldn't be noticed, but there just wasn't enough room, and it was impossible at this point to solve the issue this way. So the next phase in Thompsonville was the attic. The home built at Thompsonville that housed the whole town had an attic, and it was big, and it was empty. Maybe not the finest room in the world, not even finished, kind of dusty, but it was big. And the mayor suddenly had an idea. He could take all of these lost souls off every corner of his town and put them up in the attic. That, to him, seemed like a solution to the problem. So that's exactly what he did. He went around town and he went to all of the individuals on all of the corners, and he said, "All right, you guys, I have a place for you to go. You can come with me." So they did. What choice did they have? They were tired of being outside, hungry and cold. They were desperate for just somewhere warm to sleep. So they went. And when they got to the big home, he took them inside and he said, "You get to stay here." And they were like, "Oh my God, something good. Maybe there's some hope." And he said, "I'll show you to your rooms." And he took them to a stairwell at the end of one of the hallways. And it was really, really long and tall. And he said, "Come with me. Come up these stairs." So they went up. They went up each step, all the way to the very top of this giant home. And then he opened a door. And he showed them all in, and he said, "You need to stay here. And I don't want to hear a complaint. And I don't want to hear a fuss. And I don't care how you feel. Under no circumstances do you come out of this attic. No reason at all, not 2 seconds in your thoughts should be, I want to get out of this attic. I don't want to see you downstairs. I don't want to see you in the town. You can have a roof over your head as long as you don't leave it. Stay out of sight. Stay out of mind. And just be quiet and stay here." However, this is a sad part of the story, because they didn't really have a choice. They were cold. They were hungry. And they certainly were lost. I'm going to pause this for a second because there's a really crazy noise and I have to figure out what it is. Of course, now that I'm trying to figure out what it is, it's not happening. All right. So, they didn't have a choice. So they stayed. And the mayor, once they all chose to stay, knowing that the mayor just got consent because he told them the conditions and they chose to listen, he then put security at the door. And he said, anybody tries to leave, he'd stop them and put them back. Under no circumstances should these people be seen by anybody in Thompsonville or anybody who visits Thompsonville. And that security was 24/7. There was always somebody at the door. There was always somebody watching. And so it went. And the people in the attic, and I say addict because we all know the pun in this story. But the people in the attic got worse and worse and worse until they thought there was no point in living, no point in existing, no point at all, no hope, no light, nobody who could understand. And all I can say is that the problem never got better. And they all felt trapped. And what Thompsonville did not know is that it could happen to anyone. And that isolating the problem in a dark space did not prevent the darkness from spreading in the other spaces. So when he realized that there was a possibility that one of his model citizens could become sick with this darkness, this illness, he simply took them and shoved them in the attic with the others. I don't want to get too dark, but some people in that attic didn't make it. It went on for too long, and every day got worse. And more people got shoved in every day, and it was crowded. And it was unbearable. And if you're depressed by this part of the story, well, then maybe you've gotten the point. What was needed was missing the whole time in this story was empathy, understanding, and compassion. Because if those three elements had existed in Thompsonville's mayor and its citizens, they would have gone up into the attic and they would have said, "Hey, can I sit with you for a minute? You want to talk? I would like to hear about you. How did you get here? What have you been through? I see you have some problems, and some problems you can't solve yourself. I see you're struggling. Let me listen to you without judgment. Let me sit with you and talk." If the citizens of Thompsonville and the mayor had known that this was a curable, maybe not curable sometimes, but a manageable condition, and certainly one that didn't need to be hidden in a dark attic, then some of Thompsonville's citizens could have had a chance to live in the glorious vision that the mayor had had. And it was unfortunate. The good news is that as time went on, people started to notice that people were missing. They would see that their sister was gone, or their cousin, or their friend who was 2 floors up and 6 doors over was gone. And they started to wonder, where are they going? Where did they go? Are they vanishing? What's going on? The mayor never told anybody. He just simply hid them away. And as this progressed, suspicions were rising. There were searches. And eventually someone found that attic And they opened that door and they found those people. And at that time, with all of the families missing their family members and their friends, they clearly realized, holy crap, I love this person and they're sick with this dark. And now I have compassion and now I have empathy because I love this person. Let's correct that. Sympathy, because empathy grows from experience. And if you haven't experienced mental illness and addiction, it is hard to empathize. But you can certainly understand love. And they saw their family and they said, I love this person. They're sick. Well, let's do something. And that is when Thompsonville decided that their mayor needed to come up and to explain what's going on and how this was happening. To be honest, they were furious and heartbroken, and they looked at him and they said, why? Why wouldn't you tell us? Like, why did you take them away and hide them? And he simply said, I didn't want the town to look dirty. I didn't want us to look like that. And everybody who had a sibling, a daughter, a son, they suddenly felt like the mayor just attacked them. That was their brother. That was their mother he was talking about. And they promptly dismissed him from his role. And upon that dismissal, elected one of the families affected by this conspiracy, and this maybe not conspiracy, but this lie, this secret, because it needed to be let out of that attic, and it needed to be assessed as something that was out of love and not out of shame. And that Thompsonville actually grew to be one of the most wonderful places to go to and visit. And people generally started wanting to stay at Thompsonville, and eventually they had to build an addition or two to that big home, and it just got bigger and bigger, and everybody was just so in sync, and there was an air of empathy and an air of compassion in Thompsonville that just was infectious. So people came from all over the world to see what was the hype in Thompsonville. And thus the story goes, to this day, Thompsonville is bustling with positive energy. And maybe not everybody in Thompsonville has a happy ending. Certainly not everybody was able to conquer the dark, but there was a new air in there. Thompsonville had hope, and that people were getting treatment and love, and even though they couldn't be cured of this darkness completely, they got through it without being hidden, without being shamed, and they even were able to manage the damage better. And some grew to be Thompsonville's most prided on citizens. The ones that were inspirational, the ones that stood out, and the ones that really, really shone and sparkled. And their families sparkled and shone along with them. And that is the end of the story. And the truth is, it never is the end. It goes and it goes and it goes. But here's the thing. Positive light, compassion, love, and empathy are also contagious. So Thompsonville's just been growing. It beams like a light and a shining star. and all are welcome, and all are respected. The end.